Most men don't realize they're losing themselves until they look up one day and don't recognize who they've become. Not because they were weak, not because they didn't care, but because they kept adjusting in places they never should have. Rebuilding doesn't begin when everything collapses. It begins earlier. In the moments no one warns you about. The moments that don't feel dangerous at the time. Because men don't fall apart all at once. They erode, quietly. Most men don't enter relationships blind. They enter hopeful. They believe effort matters more than alignment. They believe patience will be rewarded. They believe showing up consistently is enough. That belief feels honorable, but honor without structure eventually becomes self-betrayal. I didn't see that at first. Where men start compromising too early. It doesn't start with big sacrifices. It starts with small ones. Letting comments slide, rearranging your time, explaining yourself when you didn't need to. You tell yourself it's temporary, that things will stabilize once everyone settles in. But stability doesn't come from patience alone. It comes from position. And position is either held or quietly given away. Peace becomes the excuse. Here's where most men get trapped. They choose peace over clarity. They avoid tension because they don't want conflict. But peace that requires silence isn't peace. It's avoidance. And avoidance doesn't preserve relationships. It slowly weakens them. I remember moments where I felt something was off but didn't speak up. Not because I was afraid, because I didn't want to disrupt what I was building. That's when the shift begins. Hope can blind you. Hope is powerful. It makes you believe tomorrow will fix what today keeps exposing. You start thinking, once things calm down, once trust builds, once we get past this phase. But alignment doesn't arrive later if it wasn't present early. And no amount of effort creates respect where structure is missing. When a man starts shrinking, this is the part men rarely talk about. You don't feel angry. You don't feel defeated. You just feel smaller, less certain, less decisive, less grounded. You start second-guessing instincts that used to guide you effortlessly. That's not maturity. That's erosion. And once a man starts shrinking, everything around him feels heavier. Let me be clear. This isn't about blaming women. This isn't about bitterness. This isn't about being hardened. This is about awareness. Men are rarely taught how dynamics actually form. They're taught how to react, how to apologize, how to adjust. Very few are taught how to protect their center, and without that center, every relationship becomes destabilizing. The consequences don't come with explosions. They come with distance, with confusion, with exhaustion. You wake up tired without knowing why. You feel responsible without feeling respected. You're needed, but no longer grounded. That's when men start rebuilding, whether they realize it or not. Rebuilding doesn't start with leaving, it starts with seeing. Seeing where you compromised too early. Seeing where you mistook endurance for strength. Seeing where you gave away structure in exchange for temporary peace. Once a man sees that clearly, he can't unsee it. And that's where this journey actually begins. Because the next step is understanding how men lose leverage long before they lose the relationship. And that's what comes next. And once you see that, you start asking a different question. If I compromised too early, if I adjusted before I understood the cost, then leverage wasn't taken from me. It was given away. Most men think leverage is something you lose after the relationship breaks. But by the time things collapse, leverage has usually been gone for a while. Not because of betrayal, not because of conflict, but because leverage leaks in the same places erosion begins. Leverage doesn't disappear in one moment. It fades in small decisions. Moments where clarity is delayed, where boundaries are softened, where standards are explained instead of lived. Every time a man negotiates his core to keep things calm, he trades leverage for approval. And approval is a weak currency. Leverage isn't power over someone. It's position within yourself. It's knowing who you are before anyone else gets a vote. It's having a life that doesn't wobble when tension shows up. That's not dominance. That's stability. Here's where the shift happens. A man starts organizing his decisions around reactions instead of principles. He stops asking, is this aligned? And starts asking, will this upset things? That's when leverage begins leaving the room. Quietly. Avoidance feels peaceful, until it isn't. Because every avoided conversation creates a silent imbalance. One person adapts, the other leads. by default. Not maliciously, not consciously, but structure always fills a vacuum. And when a man abandons structure, someone else defines it for him. Respect doesn't vanish overnight. It recalibrates, slowly. Not through what a man says, through what he tolerates. Tolerance without standards doesn't look like love. It looks like uncertainty. This is why men feel blindsided later. They remember effort. They remember loyalty. They remember endurance. But they forget one thing. Effort without structure doesn't create leverage. It creates dependence. And dependence is fragile. Strong relationships don't begin with sacrifice. They begin with position. A man grounded in his routine, his purpose, his direction. Not rigid, not cold, but centered. Because when a man has a center, he can love without shrinking and lead without controlling. The moment a man realizes this is when rebuilding actually starts. Not when he leaves, not when things explode, but when he finally sees, I gave leverage away too early, and understands. That doesn't make me weak, it makes me teachable. Awareness changes posture, it changes decisions, it changes what a man tolerates and what he no longer explains. Because once a man understands leverage, he stops chasing peace and starts choosing alignment. But here's the question most men never ask. If leverage is built before commitment, what should actually be in place before a man fully invests? Not rules, not demands, but foundations. Because the next step is understanding what a man must establish internally and externally before any relationship can stay balanced. And that's what comes next. Once a man understands leverage, the question isn't whether he should invest again. The question becomes what must already be in place before he does. Because commitment doesn't fail first. Foundations do. Most men think foundations are rules. They're not. They're internal. They're the things a man establishes before anyone else gets access to his time, his energy, or his future. Without foundations, a man improvises, and improvisation feels flexible until pressure shows up. The first foundation is direction. A man without direction will always bend toward whoever has it. Not because he's weak, but because direction creates gravity. When a man knows where he's going, he doesn't rush to merge paths. He observes. The second foundation is routine. Routine isn't control. It's self-respect in motion. It's how a man proves to himself that his life doesn't pause to accommodate someone else's emotions. Without routine, a man becomes negotiable. The third foundation is standards. Not spoken standards, lived ones. Standards aren't ultimatums. They're patterns. They show up in what a man does consistently, what he doesn't explain repeatedly, and what he's willing to walk away from quietly. The fourth foundation is solitude. Not isolation, solitude. The ability to be alone without reaching for distraction, validation, or urgency. A man who can sit with himself doesn't cling when connection appears, he chooses. And the final foundation is patience. Not passive patience, disciplined patience. The kind that doesn't rush intimacy, doesn't overinvest early, and doesn't confuse chemistry with alignment. When these foundations are in place, a man doesn't chase peace. He creates stability. He doesn't lose himself in relationships. He brings himself into them, intact. This is where real rebuilding finishes. Not with armor, not with bitterness, not with walls, but with structure. Because a man with structure doesn't fear commitment. He filters for it. And when a man reaches this point, he's no longer rebuilding from damage. He's building from clarity. That's the difference, and that's the end of this chapter.